Hi, my name is Cindy, and I'm the moderator for the Service and My Recovery workshop today. Please keep your microphone muted as we open the meeting with the Serenity Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Our speakers today are Neil from Baltimore and Ann from Santa Cruz, California. So we have people from both sides of the country with us today. Today we will be talking about tradition and concept number 4. The tradition 4 is each group should be autonomous except in matters affecting other groups or OA as a whole. The principle behind that is autonomy. The concept that we're going to be discussing is concept 4. The right of participation ensures equality of opportunity for all in the decision-making process. And the principle behind that concept is equality. The 12 steps and 12 traditions of Overeaters Anonymous and the pamphlet, The 12 Concepts of OA Service, are great resources for more information about traditions and concepts, and are available at the OA bookstore, which can be found on the OA website, oa.org. To stay in harmony with the traditions 6 and 10, we ask the speakers and members who share mention only OA-approved literature. After each speaker, there will be a time for sharing. This workshop is being recorded and will be posted on the OA website podcast page, as well as other podcast feeds like iTunes. If you speak, it is considered implied consent to have your voice and your share recorded and posted. To preserve your anonymity, please use only your first name or a fictitious name when you share. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. Please use special workshop meeting number 82278 when making your contribution. Go to OA.org and click on Contributions. Donations may also be mailed to the World Service Office, Post Office Box 44020, Rio Rancho, New Mexico, 87174-4020. If you have any questions regarding contributions, you may contact the World Service Office, 505-891-2664. Thank you for helping us to carry the message. First, I would like to introduce Ann, who will be speaking on Concept 4.
My name is Ann, grateful, recovering, compulsive overeater. First, I'll share my story. I've been a member of Overeaters Anonymous since 1980 and have imperfect abstinence since 1982, maintaining a 20-pound weight loss and a whole bunch of weight loss between my ears. I definitely qualify for this program. Eating food out of the freezer. This was before microwaves, so there was no way I could wait for it to defrost. Eating off my son's plate, cleaning up, being the garbage disposal for any food left on plate, and so on. So I definitely qualify. When I came to the program, I was living in Nebraska. Spent my first about 9 months in Nebraska, working my program there, where there weren't a lot of meetings, especially not in the evenings. So I did supplement with AA meetings, and the local AA meeting was very open to letting me come and share my story there. So I was very blessed. Then I moved to California, and immediately I knew what I needed to do was to get to a meeting. And that was definitely my saving grace. I'd been abstinent. I figured it would take me just a couple months to find a job. God's plan was different. It took me 6 months. So I got to meetings right away when I moved to California, because it was definitely, and I knew that's what I needed to do. And because it took longer to get a job than I thought, I was running out of money. I was running out of savings, and I got scared. I got very, very scared, and I went back out and started eating compulsively again. And that lasted for a few months, and then I got a job, and which was the perfect job. Of course, God knew that I needed to wait for this perfect job. I've been imperfectly abstinent ever since. So I'm so grateful for this program, very, very grateful. And service is a big part of my story. I started out with, of course, with service at the group level, went to the intergroup, went to region, went to World Service as a delegate to the World Service Business Conference. Also been chair of the Region 2 convention here in California, and I've just had I do a lot of sponsoring. I've just been blessed with the opportunity to give service. It's really a lifesaver for me. It's the first place that I felt, Overeaters Anonymous is the first place where I ever felt at home, that I felt I was part of, that I wasn't on the outside looking in. And a lot of that has to do with the courage to offer myself for service. And that's really been a lifesaver for me, and it continues to be a lifesaver. As life goes on and service goes on, I continue to look for ways that I can give service because it's so important to me. So I continue to participate at the region level. In fact, I was at a region assembly yesterday, and also bringing back the news to the intergroup. So I'll be writing my region assembly report this week so I can go to intergroup next Sunday and share all the information that I picked up at the assembly. One of the things that happened is that I learned in giving service in OA that I could practice behaviors and hone my skills in things that I didn't really know I had talent in. I learned how to be a leader. I learned how to form a team. I learned how to support people as they were doing their best. And I could take all of this into my professional career to be a manager, a project manager, a people manager. So I practiced in OA where it was safe, where it was very safe to try things, and if it didn't work, to say, I'm sorry, let's figure out what to do, to ask people's opinion, to ask people's help. I didn't know how to do that before I came to OA. The three words that I just could not use before I came to OA was, I don't know. And I've certainly learned that here. In many cases, I can say, I don't know, but I might know somebody who does. So let me put you in contact with them. Or I don't know, but maybe we could look here for that information. So it's just such a gift to be able to say, I don't know. And that is what has helped me in doing service, is that I didn't have to know how to do things in order to be able to say, yes, I will take it on. I remember when I was asked to chair the Region Convention, the Region 2 Convention, this was way back in like 1987, I just started to cry because it was so scary. So, what my answer was is I have to talk to my sponsor. I need to pray about it. I need to talk to my sponsor. I can't give you an answer now. And, when I did talk to my sponsor, she said, of course you're going to do that. Of course you are. She knew that I would be able to do it. I didn't know that. That's why I need the people in Overeaters Anonymous to be able to see who I really am, even when I can't see it. That's really important to me, to continue to be able to hear what people say to me. It was always, if someone paid me a compliment, it was always like, oh, that old thing, or, oh, I didn't really do it. It was somebody else. And, and I've learned here to just say, thank you. Thank you. And let that come in, knowing that the true source of that talent is my higher power, whom I choose to call Mother, Father, God. So a lot of it is about being a channel of the power and the grace and the compassion and the source coming from my higher power, that it's being a channel. So when I don't think I know how to do something, I know that God and I together can figure it out. I don't have to do it on my own. And that has served me well in doing service, because I do have talents. I do have talents that I can give to Overeaters Anonymous in helping to carry the message. I do have those talents, and even when I'm not able to recognize them in the moment, it's such a gift to be able to have others recognize it. And I believe that part of my doing service is doing the same for other people. Part of the service is to acknowledge the talents and the recovery of other people that are around me in meetings, at conventions, at assemblies, is just to acknowledge the good work that people do, the changes that I observe in other people. I know for me, my change is always very, very slow, so I don't see it. Getting feedback from someone else is really helpful for me to stay grounded in what's really happening. So I'm very, very grateful for that. I'm grateful for the traditions. I love the traditions, and I'm learning about the concepts. I spent a lot of time studying the traditions because I was an intergroup chair. I went to Region 2. I went to World Service, and you really need to understand the traditions in order to fully participate. And so it's such a lesson in learning about the traditions to see how things really work. And there are many times outside of OA, outside of 12-step, where I wish they had the traditions. I wish they had the concepts, because it would make working with them so much easier. It would be so much better, a better use of time if the concepts and the traditions were used. But that often doesn't happen in big business. I used to work in high tech, and it definitely didn't operate there. So I think that's true for most corporations and businesses, especially the big ones, that they aren't following the traditions and the concepts, and it does make for a rough road sometimes. So the concept 4 is the right of participation. And so the right of participation ensures equality of opportunity for all in the decision-making process. We all have that opportunity. Our meetings have business meetings where they talk about finances and formats and how much literature to buy and what donations to make, the 60-30-10 donations to make. Everyone has the right to participate in that business meeting and vote in making those decisions. Many people choose not to. They just leave. They leave after the regular meeting is over, which is okay, but it's not because they weren't welcome, that they didn't have the authority to participate, that they had the opportunity to participate, and they could choose whether to participate or not participate. So we all have the right to participate. And the same way goes at the intergroup level, that each face-to-face meeting has an intergroup rep, or should have. Now, sometimes it's a little hard to get people to volunteer, but that's how your voice gets carried. So the individual member shares their voice at the meeting level, the meeting shares their voice at the intergroup level, the intergroup shares their voice at the region level by sending reps to the region assemblies, which is what I did over the weekend, Friday night and Saturday. And then the intergroup also gets to send delegates to the World Service Business Conference, where your voice again is heard in electing the trustees and the board of directors, approving or not approving literature that has come from the literature committee, all of those things where you have a voice, and you only have a voice. The voice goes from the group to the World Service Business Conference. Decisions are not made at conference that then come down to the group, because the group is at the top. The individuals in the group are at the top of the pyramid, and that the voice goes down. It goes so it's going down from the individual member through the group to the intergroup to the region and to World Service. So we all have a voice, and the concept says we have the right of participation. Everybody has the right of participation. So it's not they. What did they do? It isn't they. It's us. It's us. We get to participate and let our opinions be known, be included in the vote on things that are for OA as a whole. And that's one of the things to really think about as you participate in those decisions, is that we want to make decisions that are good for OA as a whole, not just for me as an individual, for us as a group, but for OA as a whole. And some things we may see we don't particularly agree with, but remember that those decisions were made by representatives from intergroups that went to the World Service Business Conference, and they are from all over the world. And so everything that's decided there is kept in mind with OA as a whole, that things that are good for OA as a whole. So I think that that's going to end what I have to say. And what I would like to do is to present some questions for the sharing when we open it up for sharing. So I would like people to think about, was there a time when you felt unworthy to participate in any group discussion, or that you felt you hadn't been in program long enough and that you shouldn't have a voice, or that others knew better than you did? So if you can think about those things, about being unworthy, not in the program long enough, other people know better, or anything else that you might want to talk about concerning equality, concept for equality. The right of participation ensures equality of opportunity for all in the decision-making process. Thank you for listening. Again, my name is Ann. I'm from Santa Cruz County, California, and I am a recovering compulsive overeater.
Thank you so much, Ann, for speaking. Just as a reminder, this workshop is being recorded and will be posted on the OA website. If you speak, it is considered implied consent to have your voice and your share recorded and posted. Please use only your first name or a fictitious name to preserve your anonymity. The workshop is now open for sharing. Ann has posed a couple of really good questions, or if you have something else you'd like to share on anything else that pertains to this topic, we would be happy to hear you. So is there anyone who'd like to share? I think I will share then. This is Cindy, and I'm a compulsive eater, and I really appreciate the questions. I don't know that I ever felt unworthy or was not interested in participating, but I am usually disappointed when more people are not thinking that they should have a say-so in how our meetings are run or how our organization is managed, because it is, you are very right, it is us. It is not them. It is not they. It is not how those people manage something. It is how we participate and contribute to our fellowship. Service for me has always been a big part of my recovery because I'm an active person. But I like Ann, took skills that I had and brought them here, and they have been hammered out and honed and improved a million times more than they were when I was out there fumbling around, eating compulsively, trying to pretend like I knew what I was doing, and trying desperately to hold on to that facade that I had. I came into the program about 26 years ago. I weighed over 200 pounds, and I was just absolutely just lost in the world that I was in. Through program, I learned how to work with others. I learned how to give up my need for compulsive eating. The need went away, and as the need went away, the food got in right size and got in the right place, and I have 16 years of abstinence now, so I'm really grateful for that. I'm down to a normal body weight, and I'm grateful for that also. But because I had gotten better at using my skills, at figuring out how to work with others, those things all became possible, from letting go of the food, working the steps, and then following the basic guidelines of our program, which is get up, take a look at the day, ask God what you're supposed to do, and then do it. That's how I look at it. Giving service, participating in service is one of the things that I think is incredibly important to our fellowship. And the traditions, just like it was said, do keep us from struggling so much. It gives us guidelines on how to work with others and to get there without conflict or without withdrawing. I always tell people, and I don't know, I'm not a big conflict lover, but I've learned to deal with conflict by going to OA service, to walk away from something that feels uncomfortable and then come back and stand up and voice my opinion anyway. I think that that is a huge gift from my higher power, because I always was a victim. I always let the other person be the stronger person. And I don't have to do that anymore. I have a voice. I have good thoughts. I have lots to contribute, and I'm willing to stand up and speak when I feel it's necessary. I also have learned to respect other people's opinions and to step down when I've overstepped my boundaries or overstepped their boundaries. And I've got too intent in the fight to step back and say, what's my part here, higher power? You show me what I'm supposed to be doing today, rather than me getting locked into battle about something that may or may not even matter that much. So the big thing, I love the word equality. We are all equal in what we have to contribute, and we all have a place, and we all have, I don't know, I'd like to say there's some requirement that we all can participate. I mean, it's wonderful that we can participate if we choose not to. That's our right, but it's nice to remember that we have that right. And in order to keep OA strong, we might consider that as one of our requirements to participate as well, that we should try to participate. I don't know if we ever want to participate, but that we should try to participate to keep OA strong. And with that, I will pass. Is there someone else who would like to share?
This is Lynn.
Hi, Lynn.
Hello. I'm Lynn, a compulsive overeater, and I love to do service. When I first came into the program, I didn't know anything about 12-step and didn't know what I was doing, didn't really understand what anybody was talking about in that first meeting, except that they were so honest. And by maybe the third week, that meeting was a Monday, Wednesday, Friday meeting, so by the third week, 9 meetings in, I ended up with the key to the church. And then another couple of weeks later, somebody asked me to type up the meeting list for intergroup, and that was it. People asked me if I could help. They asked me to do things that I was able to do, and I kept going. It was such a safe place, just like Ann was saying, it's such a safe place to practice things. I stepped up to jobs. I took on jobs that I didn't think I knew how to do, but everybody was so nice about it, and not everybody was doing everything perfectly either, and I could bring it back and say I didn't accomplish anything. Everything would still be okay, and I'd get another chance possibly to do it and do better. And as I increased these skills, they helped me so much at my job and helped me at home too. I really took on a responsibility to do my part by doing that service. We don't have a lot of people doing service at my intergroup, so I've been lucky. I don't know if it's lucky, but I've had a chance to do a lot of different jobs. Some I'm good at, some I'm not. Our treasury is coming around to be due again in the fall, and it's a job that I can't do yet. And I know that. So even though there could be an empty position there, I know that I'm not the right one for that job, and there's other things I can be doing. And all of this service has kept me in OA. This is what's kept me working towards my recovery, and I can't be more grateful that there are so many opportunities for me to do service. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Is there anyone else who would like to share? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and move into halftime, and then we'll listen to our second speaker, and then we'll have more time for sharing later. Please remember that we are self-supporting through our own contributions. Please use special workshop meeting number 82278 when making your contribution. The World Service Office needs our support to continue to serve our fellowship. Go to OA.org and click on contributions. Thank you for helping us carry the message. I would like to welcome our second speaker, Neil, who's from Baltimore, and he will be speaking on Tradition 4. Go ahead, Neil.
Thank you, Cindy. My name is Neil. I'm a compulsive eater, and I'm very happy to be able to speak on Tradition 4 and the principle of autonomy. I think it's a very important one, and it's certainly near and dear to me. I've been a member of Overeaters Anonymous for 26 years, and I have been abstinent for the last 20, which means that I spent a period of time trying to find my way, and I think in some ways Tradition 4 figures into that, because I come from nonconformity, impulsivity, defiance, and just a general self-centered view of everything that I did. And I developed certain ways of eating that I think were born out of just sheer desire, and where they may have worked for me at one point, they began to become a substitute for the normal way that people cope with adversity or pressure or the responsibilities of life. And so I became very bad at that, and I became very good at running from responsibility and using relief-seeking behavior to hide, to drop out, and that was not a winning formula to being a very happy person. So I did not get very big in program. I weigh around 160 pounds now, and I never weighed more than 190 pounds, so I'm maintaining a 30-pound weight loss for a good long time. I used exercise to control my weight, and I beat my body up pretty good. While my body size didn't get that big, I think the interior deterioration certainly was equivalent to people that I've heard tell stories where the physical effects of their disease were a lot more severe than mine. It was really the emotional and mental damage that my disease caused that got me into program. I always wanted to have a voice. I felt the craving to have an opinion. I used to listen to talk radio, and I would just think, I just want to call them up, and and sometimes I would, and I would be very nervous about doing it. And the problem was that I didn't really have very well informed opinions. I just felt strongly about things. I felt strongly about all sorts of things. Unfortunately, a lot of them were kind of just railing at the injustice of life kind of things that when you come from a selfish point of view, they're not necessarily a mainstream opinion. So I really had to learn how to fit in and how to go along in program, and those were some of the more important lessons that I had to learn, and got abstinent in the Boston area. And in Boston, there was a lot of emphasis on physical recovery in the groups that were specific to the immediate Boston area. That's where 90-day OA kind of got its start. So my roots in program were around refraining from flour and sugar and weighing and measuring, and you don't eat no matter what, and the most spiritual thing I do is put my chicken on the scale, that kind of stuff. I embraced it initially. And then, like a lot of people, I confused my food plan with my abstinence, and I got very thin. And then I decided, well, this is kind of hard. I think I'll kind of work my own program, and was abstinent most of the time, but kind of picking and choosing what things I wanted to do. And I didn't realize that I hadn't fully taken step one. And so I struggled, I struggled not so much with my weight, but I struggled in the sense that I felt like I didn't fit in. I'd go to meetings where where it was kind of there's no rules, and I would listen to people that I felt were stuck in ways that I guess I was stuck. And then I would look down on the people who went to 90-day meetings where you had to sit there. I mean, I considered whatever suggestion was as a demand, and I'll be darned if I'm going to go to these meetings, and I've been around for a while now, and that I can't talk, that's ridiculous. But what I found was where I had seen these people as being rigid and unyielding, really there was a level of commitment and devotion and investment in doing the program a certain way that was beyond my ability to understand simply because I hadn't done it. And I think with a lot of the friction that happens between groups comes, I think, from not really being able to put yourself in the other people's shoes or to see the value of the experience as opposed to the cost. I would think if I go to a meeting and I can't share, it's like, oh man, that's not fair. Everybody deserves their 5 minutes. The big book says that we can't give away something that we don't have, and the kind of recovery that people one after another would get up and they would speak, and they would actually get up and go to the front of the room, which was another thing that people would get all bent out of shape about they want to sit in a circle, and they want it to be more kind of encounter group like. And actually Roseanne back in the beginning, I mean, she felt like meetings were turning into more of a coffee clutch kind of setting, and she went to AA, and she saw that they set up auditorium style, and she started to set up meetings auditorium style so that people would be more focused on the speaker, give them their undivided attention, and frankly, that's what I needed. I come from short attention span, ADD, and I needed to learn how to focus. And this was a very hands-on way of working one's program, where you went to certain meetings and you made certain phone calls, and the tools were kind of mandatory, and it kind of flew in the face of the there are no rules in OA. They used to say, well, if you think there's no musts in program, then go through the first 164 pages of the big book, and you'll see the word must a whole bunch of times. So, of course, that used to get my dander up, but then I realized it's true that if I wanted what they had, I had to be willing to go to any lengths to get it, and then I would be ready to take certain steps. It kind of set it in how it works. And so I began to see the value of boundaries and limits and taking things a day at a time and doing things in a certain way. That conformity wasn't it wasn't a four-letter word. And as I put structure around certain areas of my life, I began to see where other areas of my life were out of balance and would benefit from putting structure in those areas as well. So it really was a very effective way of enabling me to lose some of my more self-centered behaviors and kind of put my chips into the middle of the table with a bunch of people that were really enjoying life and living life. And most importantly, they were abstinent. They were cleanly abstinent. There was a firm line about what compulsive eating was and what abstinence was and what it was not. However, what happened with me and what's happened with other people is that I became kind of a snob that way, and I felt like this was the right way to do it. And sometimes I wasn't too shy about sharing that opinion, and there was a certain amount of dismissiveness and judgmentalism that came from that. And I'm happy to say that I think that's a phase that I went through, and I don't necessarily feel that way now. I'm glad that OA is very diverse, and in fact, it says each group should be autonomous. It doesn't say we may be or we can be. It actually says we should be, and that's something that just kind of hit me over the head about 5 years ago after all that time in program. We should be autonomous. That diversity is important. Finding a voice is important. That expressing oneself is important, but like with all of the other traditions, it encourages us to take a step back and to look at what expressing ourselves does, if anything, to other groups or OA as a whole. Does it cultivate harmonious interactions with other people, or does it create controversy? I can remember when there would be people who would want to close a meeting with the Lord's Prayer, and that was a big thing. And when I started doing service and coming to World Service, every few years, another group would bring up we want to be able to close a meeting with the Lord's Prayer, and it was because of rotation of service. There were always new people coming in, and I had to realize that it was important for me to be patient and to learn how to listen. And in fact, one of the things that I had to learn when I went to 90-day meetings, when I wasn't abstinent 90 days, was to sit there and to listen. And even afterwards, to sit there and listen to people who I had to put my voice out there so that people could give me feedback and give me the help that I felt I needed. So this whole thing of finding a voice and expressing oneself and learning to get outside of a comfort zone, and that for me has been a regular part of my recovery, is to consistently recognize that being outside of the comfort zone, whether it's taking on a new service position or just speaking up if I see something going on at my meeting that is affecting me. For example, we would have a structured format, and someone would come to the meeting and they would enjoy being there, and no sooner would they come than they would want to change the meeting. And we'd have a business meeting, and everyone would say everybody has a right to a voice, and I think that that's true. But when a person comes to a group and then enjoys it and then begins to change it and then stops coming to the group, now you've got a format that's been changed by someone who's not there anymore, and that happened again and again and again. So expressing myself in a way that wasn't off-putting to people, because I can be pretty outspoken, as some people know. It was important for me to understand that each of the people in the meeting was important, had value, and that there were times when I had to make a decision whether or not I was willing to continue to support a group that was deciding to evolve in a direction that didn't necessarily reflect my complete philosophy, and that it was important for me to learn to go along. That autonomy was the right of the group, and we've already talked about in tradition too that format is a reflection of the whole group, not just me. And so these traditions are just so wise in that they really encourage us to be willing to step back and see a big picture, not take things personally, and not let personalities drive me away from the reason that I'm at the group in the first place is because I have a problem. It's a life and death problem, and I need help from other people who share the problem and are living in the common solution. Let me see the word. I took a lot of notes, and I haven't looked at it once since I started talking, so I should probably do that because I spent some time doing that, and I thought it was really a good thing to do. We have so many different kinds of meetings, whether it's gender-based or 100-pounders, literature-oriented, 90-day meetings, OA How, meditation, writing, phone meetings, things about health issues, youth-oriented meetings. I mean, there are so many different kinds of meetings that it would be pretty difficult to have a unified message completely, but no matter what the format says, we came up when we wanted to recommend that people have a certain amount of abstinence in order to share. We put this phrase in our format that I think deals with almost any kind of unique twist that a meeting wants to have, and it says, in OA there are no requirements for sharing. However, each group may make suggestions, and this group suggests fill in the blank. It is, however, only a suggestion. I think we have a responsibility as OA members to consider what it would be like for someone coming to their very first meeting and sitting in our meeting, that we have a responsibility to share what OA suggested practice is, and if we differ in any way from that we can explain that, and we can do it with our heads held high, but we shouldn't make any assumption that we can just say whatever we want and not be hurting another meeting as a whole. We should never compare one type of group to another group. We shouldn't introduce outside literature. I mean, there are many things that we can do that would be confusing to a member or turn someone away. I mean, there are some meetings that are very big book focused, and I found at some point that there was a general feeling that when in doubt, don't look to the OA literature, look to the AA literature. And I found that to be a little off-putting because we've spent a lot of time investing our time and energy and recovery to revising and addressing aspects of a lot of the literature that have made it more current, more currently reflect the issues of the day. I think OA has come back to a place where physical recovery is extremely important, and I know these podcasts have been designed to emphasize the importance of working all of the tools and becoming familiar with all of the traditions and all of the concepts. So I'm very encouraged that all of the literature that's coming out of OA now is an order of magnitude more focused and more unified in its message of recovery, that the recovery is in the steps and in the concepts and in the traditions and in being abstinent, that no matter what we do, no matter how we express ourselves in a meeting, that the unified message should be that recovery comes from working the 12 steps. And that it comes, I believe that the tools, we emphasized in several of my meetings, we emphasized using the tools as a means of gaining an understanding of the principles embodied in the steps as we become abstinent and work the steps. There was a segment of OA that felt that if you're spending too much time on the tools, you're wasting time and taking it away from the steps. And I found that was really not only not fair, but it really wasn't very nice either. I believe that my resistance to using one of the tools is the seeds of my next binge. My resistance to using a tool today, if I feel like I'm so recovered that I don't need to make calls because I get so many calls, then I'm forgetting that part of the tools pamphlet that says as a part of the surrender process, it's a tool that we use to reach out, extend ourselves to other people. So we don't compare, we don't put a negative spin on any other way that somebody else is doing their recovery. There's no one right way, and there's no experts, even when it comes to the big book. And the reason we don't do these things is that it makes OA less attractive, and it'll force people away. And I think that would be the worst possible thing. There have been times when I've come on very strong with certain people, and I felt like in the end they may have dropped out of OA, and that I did not represent OA in an accepting, kind manner. My passion, my intention was good, my execution was not so good, and even at this late date I still learn lessons about that kindness has to be the underlying approach with anyone in program. I don't know how long I've been talking, but it's probably closing in on the time. But I just wanted to I made a list of some of the kinds of issues that come up in formats and in ways that meetings kind of set themselves apart. And I've talked about some of them having abstinence requirements for service positions or recommendations of periods of abstinence to give those people a chance to share first. And I will say that in all those meetings, that whenever we had that, if there was any open space, that we would very quickly throw it open to anybody that had anything to share. So it wasn't something that was designed to be punitive or to separate people. It was simply to allow people who had experience, strength, and hope, and how to stay abstinent and work the program to share first. So I just wanted to say that. No food-specific language pertaining to abstinence. That's one of the things that in the old days, people used to say, my abstinence is 3 weight-measured meals with no flour, no sugar, nothing in between. And, of course, if that wasn't your food plan and you went to that meeting, you couldn't have felt very good about that. Some of the other things that comes up is mentioning food by name, crosstalk. I had a very interesting conversation with someone in New York who apparently at one of their meetings, they had a group conscience that crosstalk was not something that you had to be too careful about. I was amazed at that, but they had a group discussion and they decided that within certain limits that was something that was okay. No handicrafts, or there was some, when I first came to Baltimore, it seemed like in every meeting everybody was bringing coffee and smelly beverages and things like that, and I thought, can't we not have a beverage for like an hour? I mean, is that possible? And I was very vocal about it and annoyed everybody in a very short period of time. I still happen to think that outside of having, water if we need it, that, if we cannot bring a food or a beverage into an Overeaters Anonymous meeting, it's not such a bad idea. The way we set up the chairs recommends people speak from the front of the room at some of our meetings, and that is, people find that very frightening. Certainly at meetings, I don't believe there's really room for you sharing that. I think if we say I statements, there's no right or wrong. I think when we begin to proselytize, I think we lose credibility pretty quickly. There was one meeting that there was an issue about women who brought young children to the meeting, and in fact, that ended up becoming a meeting where they had babysitting. Making non-OA announcements in meetings. That was something that was very prevalent at one time, and then they said that any meeting that was gathered in OA's name, that we should not be bringing outside issues into the meeting. So these are all situations that come up. So I'm going to stop there, but I did write down some questions that I wanted to throw out about whether people are comfortable expressing their personal point of view within their group. Sometimes there are people who are very passive at business meetings, and when it comes up to address a format or the way that things are done, they don't necessarily express themselves, and then if the group does something other than what they want, they may have a bit of a resentment, but it's an unexpressed, we're not there to read people's minds. I would put out the question, are there people out there that have beliefs that may not be particularly mainstream as far as OA is concerned, and do we ever share them? Do we trust enough that people will accept us as we are? Do I respect groups that are doing things differently than what I'm used to? And when a group has changed their format, that it moves away from a direction that I feel is the way I would like for it to go, do I continue to support that group, or do I kind of abandon ship and then try to go find another meeting, which I've never found. I have found it to be much more spiritual experience to hang in there with a group, see what it's like for the meeting to be that way, and in most cases what I find is whatever preconceived notion that I have why it wouldn't turn out well is mostly something in my head. These are people that I feel close to and have felt close to, and that I think every family, we're not expected to agree with everything that the other one says, but we can still love each other and support each other. So I guess with that, I will close. My name is Neil. I'm a compulsive eater from Baltimore, Maryland, and I thank you all for listening.
Thank you, Neil. Thank you. Thank you very much for your share. Now is the time for open sharing on our topic, and Neil's topic was Tradition 4. Autonomy is the principle of Tradition 4. Tradition 4 states each group should be autonomous except in matters affecting other groups or OA as a whole. The workshop is being recorded, so if you choose to speak, it is considered implied consent to have your voice and your share recorded and posted. Please use only your first name or a fictitious name when sharing. Is there anyone who would like to share at this point?
Hi,
Chris.
Speak?
Yes, you may.
Thank you. I really appreciate both of the shares today on the speaking part and being a lover of the traditions and concepts as well as the steps. I'm really grateful for this series. I think for me, if I think about Tradition 4, the main thing that comes for me is there's two things. One, it allowed me to be okay with things being different than how I saw them in my head or how I wanted them or needed them or expected them or whatever. That autonomy there. I had the experience of spending almost 6 years in Germany, and I went to OA meetings all over Western Europe, and it really exposed me to a lot of differences, but because of also our concept of unity, they were still great. And then the second thing that Tradition 4 taught me was to trust the group conscience. And that is if there's an expression that says, if I'm aware, I'm responsible. If I feel like the traditions aren't being upheld, or if there's like an excessive amount of crosstalk or something like that, I can hold my peace for 2 or 3 meetings to just see how things play out. And then if I feel strongly about it, I can speak up in a loving and respectful way. And if necessary, ask for a group conscience, a discussion, and then group conscience, or table it, thought, information, group conscience at the next meeting. And oftentimes I'll even make a proposal for a group conscience, and after hearing all the discussion, I'll rescind. But that really helps in autonomy to decide on the meeting format and decide what a meeting does consider crosstalk or naming specific foods or something like that. And it's just been a treasure for me, and it's kind of like they're the opposite of each other, the being able to not just tolerate differences but accept them and come to enjoy that, but then to also know that if not, I have a way of working through that with the group, and then if it still doesn't work out for me, then I have a choice to, like Neil said, I can look for another meeting, but in my town, there's not very many, and so it's up to me to make the best of the meetings that I have, and I'm really grateful for that. So thanks for all your work on these workshops, and I'll sign off now. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Chris. Thanks a lot. Is there someone else who would like to share? We welcome everyone to participate. Any burning desires? Okay, I'm going to read the closing, but I do thank everyone for participating, sharing, and I especially thank our speakers today. The opinions expressed here today are those of individual OA members and do not represent OA as a whole. Please join us next month when we take a look at the topic, which will be the 5th month. So we'll be talking about the 5th tradition and the 5th concept. The topics will actually be purpose and consideration. I will close this workshop with the Serenity Prayer, after which the meeting will be closed. Thank you for all coming today to this Service in My Recovery workshop. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Again, thank you all for being here, and we'll see you next month, I hope. Bye-bye.